little bit shaky. I mean, all of the lineups here, I think it's going to be a struggle, realistically, to get the win with the Brute Demon Hunter.
Yeah, honestly surprised to still see a few Brute Demon Hunters hanging around in contention. Of course, you see the two players' records here, which is something we should touch on. We do tend to do this for round 8. We follow the cream of the crop along through round 1 through 7, but when we get to round 8, following the 7-0 players doesn't really achieve anything because they've qualified anyway, so there's no real drama in their matchups, whereas these players on the bubble on 6 and 1, this is win and in, lose and go home for these players, particularly because the way that we have cut the Masters Tour now, dropped to Swiss round, it's a very clean cut at 7 and 1 going through. So this is a huge matchup for both of these players, and it's a huge start here from Digo as well, who has imprisoned Felmore into Warpatinger Adorable Infestation. Outside of subbing that Warpatinger for an Initiate, this is about the most aggressive opener you can get with Hunter.
Yeah, super, super powerful. Just to clear up as well, for, as you said, we're not following the players on 7 and 0, which going into this round was Lee from China, Frozen from the Americas region, and Orange representing the EU and Sweden. We're obviously ecstatic here on the casting desk that Orange is doing well. Everything you were saying when you were singing his accolades the other day, I obviously could not agree more. Big Orange fan, both in terms of Hearthstone and joining him whenever he deigns to invite me to play games on stream with him.
Both in terms of Hearthstone and in terms of Citrus was where I thought you were going to go with that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, you're not wrong. I love a good Orange.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Jengo has not yet been bruited, so the game continues. I love this. Diversion here with the Cold Neophyte. Great response in most circumstances to a Sigil turn because it really shuts down their ability to do anything explosive. I know this is super early, but you know, a Sigil is a good sign that they might have some huge pop-off turn that could result in bad things happening to you. So I love this little shutdown, diverting himself away from that Warpatinger Adorable Infestation I was talking about turn or so ago.
Yeah, and even if it's not a pop-off turn, just denying them a quest completion for a turn is such a big deal. It would have to be specifically Spectral Sight on the left-hand side, or of course drawn on the top deck card there. And everything just going Digo's way. It's going from good to better, to be perfectly honest. With these 1-1s, if they're not cleared off, then we could see Wrangler going for picking the Volpatingers. But even then, it's not like Rhino doesn't have targets in this matchup. A lot of the small piddly minions that you're playing along the way make great targets for the Rhino to rush into.
All right, hear me out. This might be insane, but I do love a cute play here and there. Was it absurd to quick shot the 1-1 there to protect your 2 Wolpatingers, because
to buff them.
That way you know you're going to land the Warsong Wrangler. I mean, you of course the Demon Hunter can hero power, but I think anytime this Brute Demon Hunter hero powers, they're having a bad time. I think Tusk Piercer is a threat, and I think Adorable Infestation does do something quite similar, right? Where even if the hero power were to come down, it's still only 1 Warpatinger that's going to be taken out that way. Plus, of course, you do get that extra 2 1-1s developed anyway, so I think having talked through it, probably nonsense.
Yeah, I'm going to say those quick shots are more important to get there over the top of the Brute turns, because if it's not specifically this turn and Digo just goes face here from here on out, even if the Brute turn does come in, I think he still just gets there in all honesty. There's 0 healing in the deck unless you could discover it somehow. Off of the Illidari studies, and so because of that, I think Digo here can probably quite happily just go Volpatinger here to get 2 extra damage, push that face, quick shots, hero powers will close it out.
Yep. Situations like this against a lot of builds of Demon Hunter, you'll be thinking about trades and breakpoints because, for example, do you want to protect your 4 health minions from an I-Beam? Do you want to protect your 3 health minion from a Spectral Sight? Against Demon Hunter, don't worry about it. They built their deck so bad that you can just play any minion you want, and it just doesn't actually matter at all.
After this Master Tour, they're going to be like, oh, we forgot removal. I knew there was something that was missing from our deck. Silly us.
I wondered how I was able to fit all these brutes in here. Turns out I was just missing all the good cards.
Silly me. Obviously here, Jengo has one last opportunity, I'm going to say, to go exactly acrobatics into double Brute. Which would make them cost exactly 0, right? Outside of that, I think it's just obviously a complete wrap on the spot.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, I do agree with throwing down the Spirit Jailer first. Generally, you don't want to be doing that going into an Acrobatics, because if you draw a Soul Fragment off the Acrobatics, you then have no shot of activating Acrobatics. But if he was to hit double Brute there, which is what he wanted to hit, the only really relevant thing he could hit, he doesn't care if playing those 2 Brutes for 0 mana would draw him 2 more cards at that point, right? Like, his game plan has been achieved. He would much rather hit like a Soul Fragment first and then hit 2 Brutes afterwards. And so I do agree with the sequencing there. Minor detail that did not end up mattering at all, but a very clean, simple, straightforward game for the Face Hunter. And as you laid out at the start, this could very much be the pattern, is Jengo desperately trying to find a win with this Brute Demon Hunter.
Yeah, we've got Rogue and Shaman left over for Digo, given that the Priest was banned out away at the start of the series. And if you had to pick a class that you would rather go up against in Weapon Rogue or Aggro Elemental Shaman for the Demon Hunter, which one are you feeling your luck against?
I think Rogue, probably. I feel like, so obviously, again, and like, I know how trite and dumb this is, but it's actually true. You have to talk purely in terms of the Brutes, right? Because that's all that matters. Genuinely, against aggro decks, that's all that matters. In other like combo-based matchups or against control decks, we can talk about stuff. But against the aggro decks, you have to get Bruted. So if you're going to get 2 or 3 Brutes to come down, if that happens to Weapon Rogue, there's 1 Coerce in the deck here for Digo that can interact with it. But outside of that, they're not going to have minions to fight through the Brutes, so you will be able to get to counter pressure. Whereas against the Shaman, not only are they going to have minions, so let's say their board kills 1 of your Brutes, they also play 2 copies of Lilypad Lurker, which they can discount cheap with Granite Forgeborn and with Kindling Elemental as well. So, you know, even if you play 2 Brutes in a turn, they might just be able to trade through 1, hex another, essentially, with the Lilypad Lurker, and then what? You're just back to square 1, right? So I feel like the Weapon Rogue might just be a slightly better matchup overall, primarily on the they just don't play minions front, which is something that the Demon Hunter will probably have a slightly better time interacting with.
Yeah, and this Aggro Elemental Shaman, I feel like I give it a bit of a tough time, mainly the version without Doomhammer, just because I just think the Elemental interaction against a deck that fights for board often just comes a little bit weak. Like the fact that it often loses to Priest just playing kind of vanilla minions isn't a good sign. I think you have to hit a very, very strong curve with the Elementals to keep up against the likes of the Miracle Rogue, the Shadow Priests, the Quest Shamans as well, of course, that have huge amounts of tempo explosions thanks to the Lightning Blooms. But having said that, against a deck that doesn't interact with board like the Demon Hunter, I think it can be a very, very good matchup indeed. But given that Jengo is going for the Celestial Druid, is this the kind of classic matchup that you have between any Zoo-ish deck, like the Elemental Shaman, and any Ramp Druid, where generally the Druid just doesn't interact quickly enough, or does the pop-off get there enough later on when you hit the alignment?
First of all, Tempo Explosion, new band name, I called it. Secondly, yeah, this matchup can be tough. I've certainly had some experience in this matchup with Celestial Druid. There was one like particularly brutal game where I thought I had 100% safe alignment 2-turn setup, and then my opponent had a random Primordial Protector in hand from the Generation Elemental, played that, drew a minion, the 3-drop that they got ended up being Mukla. So they just like played infinite power on board on 1 turn and just killed me straight away. But I think generally it's not that difficult to find a safe turn to Celestial as long as you hit ramp. And then obviously once you Celestial, there's not that many punishes. It's not one of those decks that has like those 1 or 2 cards in the deck, like a Brute, like a Flesh Giant, whatever else, that they can just jam after Celestial. Because even if they jam Doomhammer, they're still then overloaded for 2 on their next turn going up, so they don't have a turn. So there's wiggle room, there's windows for the Druid in this matchup for sure, but as always, it relies on a little bit of removal early on, Feral Rage, Lunar Eclipse, but you've got to hit that ramp. If you're manually playing Celestial Alignment, or if you're manually playing Best in Shell, or manually playing Cenarian Ward on a fair mana turn for Druid, you're in trouble. You're going to have to ramp.
And then there's that weird balance that comes from the one broken thing you can do post-Celestial Alignment as the Shaman, which is Granite Forgeborn. Obviously, if you save a bunch of minions, play that, then you can just absolutely explode onto the board. But I think then the real punish comes in from that. If you're saving all your resources, not playing the Forgeborn, playing this slow game plan, realistically, the Druid can just not play alignment. I think if they're in the late game going Solar Eclipse plus Cenarian Ward, playing Malagos, playing the Cthulhu pieces, that beats you in the late game. If they're ramping up to that, you can't really keep up with all that armor gain and hopefully taunts that come from the Cenarian Ward as well. So I think overall, as the Shaman, you don't get too fancy. You do just play the standard tempo game plan in those early turns. And you hope that the Doomhammer will be enough to get you over the edge at the end.
Yeah, for sure. As we see that alignment in hand, I think that is one of the real things that separate the adults from the children when it comes to playing this deck, is understanding that Celestial isn't always good for you. I know, like, a lot of people, myself included, when you first pick up this deck, you're like, great, Overgrowth into Celestial, play that on 4, play that on 7 mana, boom, I'm done. And then it passes back to you and your turn just isn't that impressive the next turn, right? You're not really doing anything. And I think this is certainly one of those matchups where that can happen. There's a few other matchups around as well, like Fell Demon Hunter, for example. Yeah. I think a lot of the time, if you just don't play alignment against them, a lot of the time they're just holding a skull on the left-hand side of their hand, waiting for you to alignment, and then they're just going to try and punish you with that Skull of Gul'dan. And if you just don't do that, play chicken with them, you can just start playing Cenarian Wards and Best in Shells yourself and just win the game that way. So it's a much more multifaceted deck than the initial makeup of it would have you believe, I think.
But at the start of this game, if you want to talk about powerhouse starts, Vapor, Coin, Stormer is a ludicrous amount of damage, and it's the kind that, well, frankly, the Druid really struggles to interact with. Those Arid Stormers are just a little bit too big. You don't want to use more of Cthulhu on them, but obviously the Lunar Eclipse isn't going to be getting through them in their own right. It's going to be a mighty tough start for Jengo.
Yes, it is, and this is a very slow hand on the other side. Okay, I mean, Innovate is something, but doesn't open up any options for this turn in particular.
Yeah.
We'll eat the Nature Studies discount before dropping the Maw. Gonna have to tank some damage here for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, oh, it's so horrible because his best game plan at the moment is probably just to go Innovate, Bloom, Celestial alignment. But if he doesn't get exactly Anaconda, I don't think his follow-up is even good enough to get there. With the Overload turn he's going to have first, the fact that his opponent can just play Doomhammer, Inara, Lilypad Lurker, Granite Forgeborn, whatever, I think it's just too much pressure.
He's dead to board with no further cards played if he does.
There we go.
Right? If he goes Innovate, Bloom, Celestial, he will take 11 next turn, and then even if nothing else is played, 11 more the turn after that, because he'll be overloaded and locked out of a turn. So he's just straight up dead at 22. So plan B, I'm afraid, Jengo, and that's probably looking a little bit like more of Cthulhu this turn. Although having now drawn discounted Best in Shell. Is there any way he's getting a little excited about what these turtles can do for him next turn?
Okay, so if we're very optimistic and we say trade Best in Shell gives you Overgrowth, and then you can play Cenarian into Cenarian, I think realistically that's your only win condition. Like, you can go with this line where you kill a minion, go Bloom, Vate, Cenarian Ward, and hope for the absolute nuttiest 8-drop ever.
Yep.
I guess that's probably as good a chance as any.
Yeah, it just needs a big old stanky Blaize 8, right? Like 8/8 gain 8 armor, or a,
yeah,
I don't know, some sort of rush. Alakir will be okay in this spot, I guess, presuming something else tradable comes down alongside this. You could maybe trade 2 other minions, just leave the Arid Stormer up on the other side, something like that. Yeah,
you can get the Warlock Taunt that gives lifesteal on its death rattle. Like, maybe those really good ones like that one can get you there. But as we can see, it has to be very potent indeed, especially with the Rockbiter coming in for 10. 14 damage coming through, easily representing lethal on the following turn. I think even without anything extra from hand, which he quite clearly has the follow-up for.
Gotta be done, right? One play and one play alone. Oh, he's gonna go turtle.
Oh, he's going Shell. Wow, okay. I mean, I guess they can't eat through the entire body of turtles alone.
Isn't there a story, I'm not sure if it's an urban legend or not, but like there was a race of turtles on a particular island that never got classified because they were so delicious every time people tried to bring them back on the ship to then hand them to the research scientists to like to examine their DNA or whatever, they just never made it back because the crew just ate them all immediately.
Yeah, there was...
True story or not, but I have heard that before.
It was an episode of QI.
That's probably where I've heard it, yeah, it sounds about right.
It's a very good one, a legendary clip. And this may also be a legendary clip of Jengo just being absolutely blasted out of this game. This is a miserable performance to show in the Masters Tour. I mean, yes, obviously he has Bloom, Luna, Cenarion. It's the one shot he has left.
Yep. Come on, channel the spirit of the man himself.
Oh, yep. Okay.
That qualifies. That is a Blaze-looking 8-drop right there.
Oh, it's so much damage in Digo's hand, though. He has Doomhammer into perfect overload to go Storm Strike plus Rock Biter next turn. But that's tomorrow's problem. For now, Jengo got the Tyrion. Maybe this is enough for the moment.
Has to be Storm Strike, right? Yeah, pushes through, can deal the damage.
Okay.
Still pushing, what, 13 more this turn still? That's outrageous levels of damage.
Yeah, okay, this is smart rather than the Doomhammer. He still represents lethal easily next turn.
Yep. Feral Rage.
Oh!
That's not it. Nope.
And it really makes you wonder, when you see these players who hit like the hard counter lineups, how did they get to this point? How have they managed to avoid the entire field up until this point? Because there are a lot of players just playing these aggro lineups, or, you know, they might have Handlock in there instead of the Weapon Rogue, they might have aggro Druid instead of the Elemental Shaman, but it's the same basic principle. You're going to get preyed upon heavily when you hit this lineup.
I mean, it can happen, right? If you look at Jengo's lineup as a whole, it's not full paper, right, in terms of just being an outright combo strategy. Like, he does have Handlock in there, which is a very good anti-aggro deck. He has the Quest Shaman, which is obviously probably the best all-rounder deck in the field right now. And then Brute Demon Hunter, you know, we've talked about it enough at this point, but it is capable of winning any game at any point, just based off particular draws. So the only real deck that would be like targeted in classic Conquest sense by aggro decks is the Celestial Druid. And I don't necessarily think there's a full lineup of 4 aggro decks that you would say, I absolutely do not want to play any of these matchups with my Celestial Druid overall, right? Like, I think there's only a couple overall that give you significant problems, but I do think the Elemental Shaman, particularly with that start, is a brutal one.
A brutal one indeed, but it's going to need to be a brutal one for Jengo to dig himself out of this one. Oh, Digo himself out of this one. Man, I'm just flying out with thinly veiled puns that have already been made 15 times this weekend.
Is that what passes for wordplay these days, Derek? I thought we were better than that. Come on.
All right then, Mr. Shakespeare, tell us about Poison Rogue.
Well, instead of shaking a spear at people, what it does is equip a giant sword instead, and then go face with that. How's that for wordplay? Stick that in your Digo and smoke it. Yeah, it's when I talk about how you can't really build 4 aggro decks that necessarily just beat up Celestial Druid.
Yeah.
This is kind of one of those examples, right? Because this can't stick boards, which is what Druid is generally scared of. You're going to be going face a lot, and then eventually you're going to start getting hit with Feral Rages and Cenarion Wards and so on. And it's, your deck is also quite heavily punished by Celestial Alignment on the other side. So this is one of those matchups where you could maybe find a way out of the series with the Druid. And again, you'd have to go back and look at Jengo's record overall to see how things have gone overall. But certainly we'll see what the matchup is going to be. But I think the Weapon Rogue will have a little bit of a tougher time against some of Jengo's decks than the other aggro decks have had so far.
Yeah, it does feel like it's a bit of an outlier. Like I've kind of felt this with a lot of the aggro decks I've seen so far this weekend. Like for Eddie, I believe it was, where he had these decks that felt like they were very board dense at the start of the game but didn't have much burst. Like, that would have been a lineup that's great against targeting Druid, but I haven't seen as much Druid as you might expect. And now I agree that the Rogue is a bit of an outlier. I'd probably rather have aggro Druid there at the end, just to be able to round up 4 very board-based aggro decks. Whereas this one, it's probably good against the Warlock, it's good against every version of Warlock, realistically. Good against the likes of Mage, just to be able to deal damage quicker than they can do it to you. But as you say, the Druid, on average, I think, can get close to being able to survive. Maybe they have to get a little bit lucky with the ramp. But as you say, there's a hell of a lot of armor gain in this matchup. It's really just killing minions that Druid suffers against. And there are literally no minions in this deck, apart from Guild Trader.
Is it the Swindle build? Yeah, it is. I love this build of the deck. Is just so silly. 1 minion.
It's so dumb.
Swap back into the deck over and over again so you can draw it with Swindle. That's fantastic deck building right there. And I was about to make a point, which will now look stupid, is that I think we are also sometimes guilty of analyzing weapon rogue games of like, okay, can you survive if they play weapon on 3 and then start going face? That's not the average game for weapon rogue, right? That they just play weapon on 3. Sometimes they have to spend quite a few turns digging for those weapons. I will say that this build from Digo is doing something that I've talked about several times this tournament already, and playing all 4 weapons with the self-sharpening swords and the Swine Tusk Shank, because as I've been pointing out, it feels like they're loosely equivalent now more than ever. There aren't too many decks where you need infinity damage. Usually the damage that comes from a self-sharpening sword is enough to get there. However, against Druid in particular, I think this is one of those matchups where you are very happy to see Swine Tusk Shank instead of self-sharpening sword.
Yeah, I mean, this is already infinity damage. As long as he doesn't completely break on all the poisons, it'll be more than enough over the course of this game. So Jengo, of course, needs to find the counterplay. Overdrawing Auctioneer isn't the start he's looking for, but already, you know, this is the kind of hand that's starting to come together. If he can get himself Celestial Alignment, if he can get himself Nourish for some card draw, and then into the Cenarian Wards, if he can get those high-pressure 8-drops, this is far from over, despite the strong start from Digo.
Oh, hello indeed. He's going to go for it right now. He's using one of the blooms, which will cut into his mana a little bit. Glowfly Swarm represents an active option, but he is just going to take the armor instead of the counter pressure. He could have got 4 2/2s that turn on the board.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have to do it now. It was more just like for next turn, right? You can actually start applying some counter pressure. If you can force them to play, I mean, maybe it's optimistic that you can force them to play the Cloak of Shadows, but either way, just to start putting something on the board back the other way. I don't know if the armor game plan is necessarily strong enough when they're playing Shank on 3.
We shall see. I think personally, if I took Glowfly, I would have played it that turn, though.
Okay.
On that note, because, you know, again, how long is it until you have enough mana to draw a significant number of cards and play the Glowfly Swarm, right? Because I don't think, like, waiting 1 turn for 1 or 2 more Glowflies really makes a lot of sense, right? You miss out on 8 damage to get a couple more Glowflies. That's 2 turns before that catches back up again. So I think if I were to take it, I would have just jammed it straight away, but in the end, Jengo sticking to his guns, just going for armor, going for card draw.
So now we can stick the Best in Shell, obviously, in the way of this weapon right now, but I think with this hand, now that we've got Nourish, Gadget Sand, you want to invest in the mana now from Overgrowth. You can take 1 turn of damage. No attack buffs have been played on this so far, so it's only at the moment 2 damage. And the dividends that will be paid back, I think, are very much worth it once you find the, the Cenarian Ward.
Once again, Jengo disagrees, having a very different way of playing this matchup to either of us. I was on board with you there. I think this is felt like a safe turn to get the Overgrowth down. It will, of course, on average, be a significantly safer turn next turn to get the Overgrowth down, because you're probably expecting to take close to 0 damage this turn, allowing for bleeds. But yeah, I was kind of with you there, because it felt like the opportunity, like maybe just spiking a high roll solar or something off the top to really get some nutty defenses up, maybe finding that Cenarian Ward nice and early. I think it was worth the risk there for myself.
Yeah, of course, saved you more cheap spells to go with the Auctioneer. But, I mean, even now, Nature Studies, surely you're keeping that, right? You just go Natural Overgrowth. You're never getting a spell that's better than that, I don't think.
Single copy of Coerce is in Digo's deck if he really feels like he needs to deal with this and is given the option. But right now, nothing doing. This hand is just starting to dry out just a touch, but Weapon Rogue has that way of creeping up on you when you least expect it, with just an enormous explosion of card draw. Maximum damage efficiency here for Digo, trading 4 damage into the minion to be able to send 5 base with the weapon.
Yeah, he would have to brick very hard over the next few turns to not get there. Did swing with the Silverleaf, and he of course can't swing again unless he wants to lose the cynce shank, which he most certainly doesn't. So it is slowing down a little bit here for Digo unless he gets a good draw off the top.
Quite like just Auctioneer Moon Touch this turn.
You're playing the studies in there as well?
Yeah, you throw the studies in there as well, of course.
Right, yeah.
But obviously it creates a target that your opponent at least has to think about attacking into.
Yeah.
Particularly because you're on last charge, right? We can see the hand. We know there's no poison to land. But you can kind of assume that from your side, being optimistic from Jengo, and say, well, this is the last weapon charge. He's not going to want to throw this last weapon charge into the Auctioneer. Maybe I can just scam it out on board here for a turn or two. I quite liked it.
I agree. It was so good if you hit the Solar Eclipse, right? He's digging in a different way. I don't think this even gets him more cards, though, right? Because you go for Solar plus... Oh, sorry, the Lunar plus Studies plus the Amulet as well on the Auctioneer.
Oh, Secret Passage.
That's the draw.
Dream draw off the top, as long as he hits at least 1 poison here.
Oh yeah, come on.
Fantastic, of course. Swindle!
Oh.
Swindle not doing well. Guild Trader's going to have to be...
Shuffle the trader!
For no reason, just to come out again. Oh, what a wonderful deck this is.
Your deck's so full of poisons, I'm fine with just going for the Secret Passage again here.
Better than playing the Swindle first. Is it better than playing the Guild Trader first and then the Swindle? Obviously, I say for no reason. You do then draw the Guild Trader again, which is another 1 mana draw card that you then have available to you at that point. So there are a lot of different ways to optimize getting to a poison there that turn. That's actually a really frustrating point to hit a spectator issue, because that's a really difficult spot in the turn. Hope if that is on if that's on Digo's side, I hope that doesn't interrupt his train of thought that turn, because this is probably a very pivotal turn to get right in the state of the game, you would imagine.
Yeah, it's tough because obviously going for the Guild Trader Swindle route is much more mana intensive, but if you delete a lot of the cards in your deck, you can then get it to a state where you're quite likely to draw the Secret Passage again and then guarantee yourself all those poisons. But with so many poisons left in there, I'm kind of interested in going for the Secret Passage, thinning out your deck by just playing all the cards, and then you're so much more likely to draw the Swindle anyway. It's a tough route to go down. Looks like he went for the Guild Trader Swindle, and then even ending with a Secret Passage, because by some miracle, he's missed every poison in his deck up until this point. And finally,
there we go.
Here they come.
Just going to dump the hand. He's saying, I don't want any of this garbage. Get rid of the
Yeah, there it is.
Get the damage in from the bleed. Although I suppose he's going to get 1 more silver.
Oh, there we go.
Here. Oh, beautiful. Does have to be a little bit careful here as to whether that second Silverleaf poison is actually worth it. Of course, Silverleaf, sometimes people get a little bit too excited about it. It doesn't add damage in the immediacy. Of course, you do get an extra charge, so it turns on this weapon 16 damage into 24. But there's a very limited number of cards left in his deck, and just waiting for everything to resolve before I say with any certainty 5 cards left in his deck, which means he's kind of limited in the amount of swings he can put through before he draws fatigue, right? Like, it's a fairly simple calculation. Are you going to swing that weapon 3 times before this game ends? Because if you're not, you might actually get yourself in trouble with those extra cards being drawn.
But I think here for Jengo, he may have been handed the outright. He's obviously getting very close to dying now. But this hand, it's a nourish or a bloom away from being the absolute nuts, but it has all the tools it needs to get there with Anaconda, Gadgets, and Cenarian. If he can get himself 1 extra good card, I think that might be what he needs to stabilize, because as it currently stands, he's just taking way too much damage, and all the mana on spells. Like, he can only play a Wicked Stab in terms of damage. You're not dying on the following turn.
but I mean, the issue though is that he's used so many Vates, Blooms, and Nourishes already, right? That's all we've seen him do so far this
It's true.
Game,
Yeah,
it might still just end up being really slow for him here in the long run, but you're right in that I don't see a better alternative, and if anything else, this is probably just the best way to prevent yourself from dying straight up this turn, right? Because, like, as you say, there's only one card that can be played here.
And, well, when I said he wasn't dying, that may have been getting ahead of myself a little bit here, because there's a lot of bleeds left available in the deck.
7 cards in there. I think 4 of them might be bleeds, and he needs runner, runner, runner. Does not get it off 2 draws. They're all just left in there. But that's not the draw. There's only one thing possible for Jengo this turn. All he can do is heal for 8, right? Like, can he really pop off much harder than this?
Yeah, you just have to go Anaconda Ward and pray for a taunt.
Oh! Doesn't get it. He's dead. Oh, the 1 bleed gets burned, but that's not going to be relevant, right? Wicked Stabs, yeah, everything else to come through. Still has the 2 draws off the Silver Leaf Poisons as well after all of this. And that is going to be, quick as you like, 3-0 for the aggro lineup. The Celestial Druid, you know, Jengo just kind of took the beat your head against the wall method and just kept queuing it, trying to find a win with it. Did not get there in the end. The series, I think if they'd played it out, you know, best matchup, best expected matchup at all times, I think it probably would have been a little bit closer than that overall. But Jengo knew what the big problem was, and that was picking up a win with the Celestial Druid, and just kept trying to do it and did not get there. And in very fast fashion, I think that's just us done. Bye. Good night, everyone. Like, we're out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Still, the stream is not over yet. I'm pretty sure we have some extra matches from round 8 coming, and my heart does go out to Jengo. He's one of the old school, original, die-hard ball control fans. He was just in there 24/7 whenever ball was streaming. And, you know, I got to pour one out for the homies who were there from the start with ball control. But it wasn't his day today. He goes down to 6-2, which I don't want to speak too early, but it makes it obviously extremely unlikely that he's going to getting through to the top 16, whereas Digo on the other side, not a player that I am overly familiar with at all, but I'm sure has a voracious group of fans cheering him on, given that the Brazilian community is one of the staunch well, just players, one of the cornerstones of the Americas region in Hearthstone, and hopefully they can get themselves another redeemer, one player who can do well for the Americas in a Masters Tour. I've heard it's possible.
And just to gatekeep ball control against you, Derek, you're not an OG ball fan unless you were sat at that table at Insomnia when he walked in out of nowhere, sat down, no one had heard of him, he just started flexing his two-digit legend rank on all of us. We're the real OG ball fans, the Insomnia crew from way back in the day. We miss you, ball. Good luck. Good luck with continuing to make the fantastic game that is Hearthstone. But we have much more fantastic Hearthstone still to come, because as Derek was saying, I'm sure we have plenty more action to go around, because we have to tell you what the top 16 is going to look like at some point, and I'm sure there are still some games kicking around the rest of the tavern, because that was a very, very rapid one that we got to watch.
It was very swift indeed, and so I think without any further ado, we are going to go to a break before we bring you some of the other coverage from the final round of Swiss. And at the end of it all, we will know who our top 16 is to be played out tomorrow in a single elimination, in or you're out, finding our champion at the end. It's going to be exciting stuff, so when we come back, more action from Masters Tour Silvermoon.
everybody, welcome back to Masters Tour Silvermoon. My name is TJ. I'm joined by Lorinda for the final bits of coverage for round number 8 and the final bits of coverage for the Swiss rounds for Masters Tour Silvermoon. Lorinda, how you doing, man?
Doing good, TJ. Have you seen the top of the leaderboard? Obviously, we're covering the people who might qualify, might not, but have you seen what's happened at the top? Have you seen which region has the #1 ranked player? It's Frozen with 8-0.
Nice. There it is.
And also, Orange.
Arcus.
Also 8-0. That must be like Octasari in Swedish or something.
There you go. Well, I mean, I was looking earlier at the players that were like 6-1 or better going into round 8, and like 5 out of the, what was it, 40 players or something like that?
Yeah.
Were from America, so I'm glad we got the top spot, but, you know, the depth of talent maybe not there. But we are going to jump into this series that's in progress. It's LGDCaimiao versus Cynce. I'm going to go with Cynce.
Okay.
Cynce? I don't know. Don't know how to pronounce his name. But there should be a good one. LGDCaimiao been around for a very long time. I mean, I remember casting matches for him at the highest level, you know, as long as, what, 5 years ago? 4 years ago? The years sort of blend together at this point.
Yeah.
But he definitely a player that's been at the top level for a while.
Yeah, he's been to various, definitely championship events, I'm pretty sure. And
yep.
We were talking earlier about a lot of the Chinese old guard sort of didn't train on so well, but I think LGDCaimiao has been doing pretty well. He's got a decent record in Masters Tours. I think it's 30-22. I say I think because he's played under at least 3 different names that I've found, all like LGDCaimiao related, but different teams and such like. So yeah, a little bit hard to merge them all, but he's got a good positive record. Like I'm a good positive person. That's what we've got here. And he's bringing Handlock, which is a good positive deck.
Yeah, the biggest year for LGDCaimiao was 2018. He made it to back-to-back championships, which is no easy feat. Well, some people may argue, because of the system that China had adopted back then, that it was a little bit easier for players to re-qualify for championships because their points carried over, but I don't remember exactly what the system was in 2018 since it changed so much year over year. But still put up some decent performances at those events. So we're going to be... Wait, what? D6 Warlock? This isn't Handlock.
Who did these? What a noob.
I don't know. Oh, okay.
I think it was me. Actually, no, it wasn't me. It's the one I didn't do. Seriously.
Okay.
It was the one I've already done.
Yeah, so we have a D6 Warlock. I said what, not only because it said Handlock, but 2, because D6 Warlock, in the times that it's been left up, it just hasn't been on broadcast very often. We've seen it like once or twice, right? It could just be unlucky. The lineups that we've been watching have been different lineups that would not want to include D6. But we'll see. D6 Warlock versus Shadow Priest. I don't think the most terrible matchup. Obviously, Mindrender or Lucia makes every matchup terrible, but I played a fair amount of D6, and Shadow Priest, if you can just make it past like turn 3 or 4 without too much pressure on the board, you can get there versus the deck.
Big different though on whether you're playing the Soul Rend or not. I found from the other side playing the Shadow Priest, and this D6 is not playing it.
Yeah, it is playing the Minari Mosher though, which sometimes can be enough. Because you can like tempo out minions, right? And then Shadow Priest really doesn't want to trade into them. Just the existence of Minari Mosher means that every time you play a demon, it's got a target on its back. So that's one thing about it. But yes, not having Soul Rend is a pretty big deal. But you are running, you know, double School Spirits, double Soul Shear, double Touch, double Drain Soul, double Mortar Coil, right? Your ability to kind of pick apart the board in the early game is there. And a lot of times you win this matchup kind of by attrition and not by, you know, steamrolling your quest completion. There are turns where you can steamroll your quest completion if you like kill one minion turn 2 with Soul Shear and then they don't really develop, and then you free admission turn 3 and then you just hit Dark Glare Stealer And then on 5, you just pop off because you're still at 20 health and you win the game. Sure, but
lost.
That's not... Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's done.
There's no mind render, so don't count him out.
There's no mind render? Okay. Not yet. But you don't draw mind render until turn 3 or 4 if you're good at Shadow Priest.
Yeah.
You get your board made, then you play the Elusia. You don't need it yet. But joking aside, I can't joking aside at this point. I do quite well with the Priest against the Warlock. You've been doing well with the Warlock against the Priest. So it must be a skill-based matchup, is all I can say.
There you go. Every matchup is a skill-based matchup. You really get down to it. There's like a minimum bar, right? It's like the limbo.
Okay.
Sometimes certain matchups the limbo bar is higher, and sometimes in certain matchups the limbo bar is lower.
Okay.
It's kind of the opposite of like a skill ceiling. The lower the bar is, the higher skill you need to get under it.
Okay, why don't we just talk about a skill ceiling?
But no matter what the limbo bar is, you still need at least some skill to get under a limbo bar. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I can't get under a limbo bar. It's like physically impossible, even if I rolled sideways. But yeah, okay, I get the point.
I mean, we're kind of in the same boat there, Neil. I'll tell you that.
So we haven't got
never a big strength of mine.
Good limbo skills, but we could jump over the bar if it gets low enough.
There you go.
How about that? All right, the Chaplain's going to make this into a 1-5. Knowing there's no soul then makes this a difficult minion to remove. So he's going to challenge Qiaomiao to get rid of it using multiple cards, you would imagine.
All right, well, this is one of those games where cynce just doesn't really have the hand to go for like kind of removal. And maybe that does change the matchup considerably, right? Where if you don't have Soul Rend at all, then you lose all hope of a defensive game plan. And because he threw away a Drain Soul in the mulligan, which usually you keep that just to be able to contest. On the coin, it's not as good because, you know, usually you want to play the quest, and then on 2, if they play a must-kill minion like Void Touch Attendant, then you can Drain Soul it and you're not playing off curve.
This was actually a decision, by the way, the Homunculus. There's an argument here to say that you could play the Freshman and maybe you just end the game before the Homunculus is even required, because he did end up not playing the Freshman by playing that.
So this is bold. So by playing the Stealer in the tap, so now cynce can just go face, ignore. Oh, okay, this is the dynamic I was talking about. You're worried about Mosher, but at the same time, cynce has to spend health for all his cards, and every card that he draws costs 1 more health because the Void Touch Attendant's on board, so he takes 1 more damage. Also, there's the fact that he's just on 6. And now, yeah, he draws into the Nightshade Matron, but there's no Soul Shards in the deck. The Nightshade Matron costs 5 health at the moment, and then he's drawing into cards that also cost health.
I think he's in trouble, TJ.
He's very dead. He actually doesn't have a single way. Okay, he can kill the Void Touch Attendant. He can demonic. He's just got. He's dead. He literally can't. There's no healing in his deck. He can't even play a Drain Soul if he draws it because he's only on 1 health.
He's dead.
Even if he picks up, okay, the touch. If he draws a touch, it'll be reduced to 0 because of the rod. So he'd be able to play that.
Okay.
A little agony goes a long way.
He's hanging in there.
Yeah. Okay. So
play the backfire.
Oh yeah, he would have been able to play it because of the quest completion. So he's got to get multiple quest completions. If he wants to keep drawing, he also has to. He also should fit in a Soul Shear at a certain point. He can't cast a touch because it's not reduced anymore.
What an absolute calamity.
He still can't play the touch. He's just dead to hero power.
Maybe he'll miss.
What the heck, man?
What did we just see? Okay, well, 2-0, I guess. Told you it was a skill-based matchup.
That was a very weirdly played game of D6. So usually you can't pop off on that matchup. unless you think that you can actually kill them, or if you have soul fragments in the deck, because you're dealing so much damage to yourself, and especially with a Void Touch Attendant on board, everything costs 1 more health. So you can't, like, you usually don't have the health to hit a Soul Shard generator and then draw more cards. It just doesn't work out. And like, it was hard for me to imagine, even with the couple of quest completions that he did hit, a perfect sequence of draws that would have even allowed him to survive. Because by going down to 1 health from the get-go, he shuts off the touch unless he can actually complete the ruined Mithril Rod proc and get the touch down to 0. So you don't need that much life, though. If you can Demonic Assault and protect yourself from the board, if you're at 5 life against that build of Shadow Priest, 5 is like infinite. Because the only thing they can do is hero power you, or Void Touch Attendant hero power you. Even like 4 damage, Void Touch hero power, you're still safe from. And that's the max damage that they can do. But just wasn't able to quite get there.
Paladin. Next up, Secret Paladin for a chance at almost certain top 16. I don't want to say it's certain, but I'm pretty sure that all the 701s will get in, but weird things happen sometimes, so let's not make that any sort of official or anything. But yeah, the winner of this will be 7-1 and be in a very, very, very good spot indeed. And
yes,
cynce 2-0 up in that quest to get there. And has a decent looking
Did I tell the story of my ultimate Secret Paladin strategy against Quest decks on the play? I'm pretty sure I
told it, but was it on air or was it when we were privately collaborating in the background? Tell the story again, TJ. It's a good story.
I don't remember. So if you're on the play as Secret Paladin against a Quest deck, you keep Galloping Savior every time.
And why is that?
Because you play Galloping Savior on 1, and your opponent will coin 100% of the time and play Quest. And they will float that mana, and sometimes they'll even play a 1 mana thing to go along with it and give you a 3/4. It only happens on ladder, but before the broadcast today, I actually, I think I showed Derek and Saul that in action, and it worked. I was playing against Quest Shaman, I kept Galloping Savior, played it on 1, the Shaman coined, then played Quest, and then played Investment Opportunity and just gave me a 3/4.
So basically, they're playing around Oh My York, and then they forget they've played around because they're so relieved they forget they played the coin. And then they play the Quest, and they go, huh, this is weird. The game has bugged out, and I've got 2 mana on turn 1. I know what I'll do. I'll play another card. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Doesn't really work in this matchup, but because they're not going to play a 1, but can still happen.
Really?
Cynce is kind of just rolling through things. Has a pretty beefed up hand, and is still pushing a reasonable amount of damage. He's going to think here between Oh My Yogg and playing out the Righteous Protector. Oh My Yogg, after you see this much draw and like free admission, you're kind of scared of. But turn 4 is probably the turn that you're least afraid of, because you know, at least you know that you're not going to die. There hasn't been a Ruined Mithril Rod, so even if Cyncemeow hit the perfect hits off of the free admission, sorry, it's still not going to be enough to like completely bust you out of the game. But
he's gone with it because double conviction next turn is lethal, right? 16 is the key number, so he decided to go that way. So if there's any spell cast, he just wins the game.
Yeah.
I think that's what the hesitation was. He wanted to do it the other way and build the board, but he was realizing, hang on, I can just set up a lethal here, so let's do that because, you know, Firebat said so. Always set up lethal. Surprise! It's...
Alright, well that just put more power on the board. Can keep going though, get second round of quest completion with the Hand of Gul'dan. But still needs a little bit more to get through this board because he's only at 11. Alright, Demonic Assault's very good. And a touch as well. It's not quest completion, You can actually touch, then Demonic Assault, and then trade over and Mortal Coil.
Yep, this is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
When you get this sort of board state against Paladin, there's the Paladin has the Samurai, that's it. There's very little that Paladin can do to even try and fight back.
Yeah, there's Blademaster Samurai is not buffed, I do not believe, or it's buffed once, not twice by both of the Bannermen.
Short 2-7, I just saw it there, very quickly flicked through, but definitely a 2-7.
Yeah, which is awkward. And at 5 mana, I can't dump the Conviction on it as well, even though that wouldn't even be a full board clear at this point. It would still not touch the Stealer. We could see that Tiamiao actually has the Stealer, the second Stealer in hand. The one on the board would, you know, be pretty rough. And Tiamiao has used both Hand of Gul'dans and one Backfire, and only has a single demon left in the deck with Dark Glare. So this actually isn't like guaranteed lethal, because, you know, one of the very few draws that he does have, he has a Mortal Coil and a tap. If it doesn't hit like exactly Backfire, he won't have the ability to actually play Tamsin and then roll through more health cost cards. I don't believe.
Well, let's see what he chooses to do. There's also, I mean, he doesn't have to do it this turn, right? He's in an okay spot as long as he's careful here.
Yeah.
He gets to look at the card with a Mortal Coil because he wants to kill that anyway and see what he gets.
Yep. At the very least, he wants to play the Tamsin this turn.
Sure, yeah.
Which is very easy. Can't fit in a tap, right? Because the free admission costs mana, not health. But, I mean, this just, you know, lines up quite nicely. And then can go for the touch, then trade over the 4/5. And then there's really no outs here for cynce, because just the damage on board combined with even just a few cards that cost health.
Yeah, he can't even
let
get
alone
the Tamsin. Yeah.
Can't get rid of the Tamsin. Can't even get rid of the Stealer, actually, because it'd only be 5 damage that hits it.
Good for Tiamiao.
Yeah. And then even if Tiamiao doesn't find the lethal next turn, he most certainly will clear up whatever board cynce makes and push for a guaranteed lethal the following turn. And Secret Paladin just doesn't deal damage from hand. They need board to be able to deal any type of damage. There's no direct damage in the hand outside of Hammer of the Naru. Or I guess Sword of the Fallen, but it's only one.
Yeah, it's really very little. And he's finding it hard to even put together a turn that's coherent here. A bit like me with sentences.
Move quickly.
Just struggling to find anything of use.
Don't have a taunt.
Well, that should be it, right? There's... maybe he doesn't have the...
This is 9, 12, 15, 18, plus a tap. That's 20. Yeah, that's enough. Just with what's in hand.
E6 getting it done eventually, but that was the third time of asking. It did lose to Druid before we got into this. Then it lost to the Priest, finally beats the Paladin. I mean, the Priest game wasn't even a game. It was like, just, here's my cards, please eat them. And that was that.
Yep.
Hop in, the pit is churning.
He's going to have to get it done again. He's going to have to take on Demon Hunter or Priest in the next one as we watch the motions being gone through here.
Yep. It's actually exactly lethal. Still didn't hit like Backfire or anything high costed, but we'll be able to push through with the Manari Mosher. Alright, some life yet for Tiamiao.
Yep, absolutely. 2-1 he's got left. Let's have a quick look. It's the Brute Demon Hunter and his own Shadow Priest remaining. His Quest Shaman being banned. I mean, it doesn't matter which one he picks. He's got to pick them in any order. All the usual waffle about that. Just a matter of waiting to see what he goes. But that looked fairly clean compared to the other game, which looked a bit weird.
Yeah, that was nicely done. You know, hit the freed mission with, in that situation, probably the 2 best minions, right? Because he had Hand of Cooldown already in hand, and then he picked up Nightshade Matron, though it was very likely that he would pick up Nightshade Matron. Because he had Stealer, 1 Dark Glare, and 2 Nightshade Matrons in the deck, so he was cruising. And even if that game had gone on for a little bit, I think he probably had enough just straight up removal in his hand to wait until the Stealer, Dark Glare plus anything would have come online. So just a nice draw overall from cynceimiao and very good execution. You know, like sequencing that through, understanding that at that very moment he needed to just go Stealer plus Nightshade Matron to just try and get through the quest and find removal for the board. But
it's that time.
Game. Oh yeah,
it's brute time. Gonna see some brute, TJ.
I feel like we haven't seen like the turn 4 triple buffed brute concede.
We haven't, no, like
games yet.
It does happen more than we have seen, and it's been happening, otherwise these people wouldn't be 6-1, 7-0, whatever with this deck, right? So it has been happening out there somewhere, but yeah, on stream it's just been, I don't think the brutes have been hiding. Maybe they're camera shy or something, but maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the one where it's turn 4, just philosophies and brutes, and oh, craziness. Paladin won't have a chance if they come down. But if they don't come down, the Paladin will kill you in 6 turns, so they need to come down.
Yeah, and you have no healing, no defensive capabilities. Well, this deck actually does have a little bit. cynceimiao actually running Soul Shears. But that's it! That's the defense!
Amazing. That will save him. Right. Obviously, this is a weird mulligan for cynce because it's just got to look for the maximum damage he can find. And that's not always obvious when you're playing Hearthstone. This deck's... Alright, question number 1. Do you keep Hand of Adal?
No. Or maybe, but my biggest question was Blade Master Samuro.
Okay.
Because if you have board in the early game, which you will, okay, you threw it away.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can like trade in your board and then Samuro the brutes away if it has any buff on it, right?
Right.
But it's not guaranteed, because if you don't hit Bannerman and you're just playing Hand of Adal, it only goes up to 7 health, so if they're buffed brutes, then you actually can't get the Frenzy effect. So if he had like been able to have Bannerman and then Blade Master Samuro and maybe a Hand of Adal as well in hand, maybe you keep it, but not the best. All right, this is the beginnings of a brute opening here, with a guaranteed 3 draws next turn and the potential for, or a guaranteed 4 actually because of the trade. And so that's quest completion. So the brute's base cost would be 6 and then 4 cards drawn, so it'd be 2, and that would and he would have 1 mana left. So if he could find like Spectral Sight in outcast position, he could get a brute next turn.
Wow, that's pretty quick. But this 1-1 will save him. Actually, the thing is, like, joking aside here, cynce has a chance to just put enough attack on the board that 1 brute wouldn't be enough. And that's the problem with his deck. He doesn't have many brutes. Against this sort of deck, so cynce doing the right thing, putting enough damage on the board to try and take 1 down.
Oh, okay. So he can get a brute down this turn, I believe. Because that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 draws that he can still get. Crimson Sigil Runner.
They will never catch me.
Attack. Trade. Plus a discount.
Yep.
Oh no, the discount wouldn't hit. Actually, he can't. Excuse me.
Why doesn't the discount hit?
Because
I see what you mean.
only the cards that are drawn. If
Sorry, yeah, I thought it already had a discount, but it does, but it's not enough.
Yeah. Nope. I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's fine.
If he had not kept the brute and drawn it that turn, then he could play it on 3. That's the only situation he'd play it on 3. So just passes. We'll most certainly be going for a glide next turn. It didn't look like that was Oh My God because it was highlighted green, so I think that is Galloping Savior. But that's fine because cynceimiao has to most likely respect the Omayag anyway, and cynce just kind of wants as much board as possible. All right, so sees it's not Omayag. Oh.
My.
Do you ever philosophy to shuffle more brutes into the deck post or when you glide to redraw them?
Makes sense. It just saves you a mana in the long run.
Yeah, but he still wouldn't have enough to play him, right? Oh, no, he still has an attack, so he would, because that'd be 5 cards drawn.
Okay, let's look at it the other way. If he doesn't do that, how does he win this game? Because he's getting mown down in 2 turns. So if he's gonna miss, then it doesn't matter what's in there. So he might as well raise his chances of hitting. Otherwise, he's just in trouble anyway.
All right, so he can re-equip Tusk Piercer, which will draw 1 more. I think you're supposed to re-equip.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to too. Because that's
maybe he doesn't want the Spectral Sight this turn. Okay, he doesn't want the Spectral Sight this turn. Okay. He wanted to stop at 2 cards to not give the Galloping Savior.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep, okay. He's less.
The trade doesn't count as a card. I mean, it's still turn 4, so Conviction's not hyper-threatening at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. It's trying to get over the natural aversion to playing Carriel Roam without anything to rush into, but it's a 4/3 Divine Shield at the end of the day, and you're looking for maximum damage as quickly as possible. Yep. Xiaomiao up against it a little bit now, but still, nothing that a couple of brutes wouldn't solve. Well, Yogg doing its job. In trouble, TJ.
Yeah. Glide first because he doesn't want to give cynce more cards.
They have the brutes been on stream, we just haven't seen them.
And I don't think there's enough cards right now. And he's dead to Conviction for the time being.
These are due back tomorrow.
And that'll be game.
Cynce getting it done, or Xiaomiao's brutes not getting it done, more to the point, they just didn't show their faces.
Well, they did, but it was in his opening hand. He had to glide it away.
Right. That's going to be 7-1. Xiaomiao will have to sit and wait to see if he has the necessary tiebreakers to have any sort of chance, but it's very unlikely, unfortunately, for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's going to be one player that was 6-1 that moved to 6, right? That makes it through. So, you know, if he has higher chance than any of the other players that, you know, got 2 losses much early on in the tournament because his tiebreakers on average will be better. But we can say that every player, regardless of when they hit it, that is at 6-2 is very unlikely to make it just because of the way that the cut works when we move down to 8 Swiss rounds. It makes the cut cleaner overall because when we do 9 Swiss rounds, there's a handful of players with 2 losses that make it through and a bunch that don't. And so it just kind of feels better overall when there's only a lucky one that makes it from 6-2. So it essentially kind of moves closer to double a limb. You just have way more games and sample size, and you're playing against similar ranked opponents instead of just being matched against whoever gets bumped down to lower bracket in a timely manner. So that's what it kind of does.
Go have a quick look at the 7-1s if you're okay with that, TJ. Again, this is not official. We are not saying these people are definitely in. That will be done by the admins and everything. But 7-1s is, we said that Frozen and Orange are the 8 and 0s at the start of the show. Lee, Matty, Judgment, Super Fake, name I can't say, Ji-Quan Yu, I'm going to go with, Ji-Quan Yu, Norwis, Irock, Walder, Shouty, Davido, there's your 7-1s as things stand unofficially.
Well, and then there's also cynce and Digo that we just saw.
Yep.
Because we saw them win. So that rounds off 14. So there will be 2 players, I believe, because those are the only matches that had 1 losses that hadn't completed. So there'll be 2 6-2s that make it.
Out of a million.
Out of a million. So it's going to be between Brox, CX, Jengo, and cynce. Those are the 4 that are fighting for those last 2 spots, but we don't have the tiebreakers yet. So we will have those tiebreakers in tomorrow, and we'll post the top 16 bracket, and we'll talk through everything. But Lorinda, we've come to the end of our show. We won't be broadcasting anymore. The matches for round 8 have concluded. So do you have any final words before I send everybody off?
Nope, just looking forward to the new format where we cover a top 16 match plus this fill section where we get some more top 16 matches while we wait, as well as all of the top 8 tomorrow. So it's going to be a long day tomorrow, but it's going to be all of the important action. I think it's better this way than having the top 16 players play when they're super tired at the end of a really long Swiss. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's a true championship Sunday tomorrow. We're going to start with 16 players, and we're going to end with just 1 who will be our Masters Tour Silvermoon champion. But that's it. Me and Lorinda are done. The other casters are done. So, from myself, from the broadcast crew, from all the other talent, we thank you for watching today, and we'll see you tomorrow for the conclusion of Masters Tour Silvermoon.